Yo, Wyatt begins in like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Wyatt, and I'm your host, Wyatt O'Brien Evans. Grr, woof, goddammit, woof, woof, woof. My listeners, I've got a really insightful show for you all today. We'll chat with an activist who's giving back and making a real difference in the community. And this gentleman's personal journey and story are truly compelling. Additionally, we're going to talk depression, HIV/AIDS, and also COVID-19. And all of this is just a few minutes away. Hey, after the show, visit my online home, WyattEvans.com. That's WyattEvans.com. WyattEvans.com, the go-to destination for LGBTQ news, features, commentary, and entertainment. And WyattEvans.com is visited by more than 100, more than 100 countries on the regular. Yeah, baby. And at WyattEvans.com, you'll find my tantalizing, tempestuous, and rather tasty Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels. And the current installment is titled Frenzy! Yes, Frenzy. It's full of masculine romance, intrigue, danger, and the heat of 1,000 suns of erotic passion. That's important. It's high time to welcome our special guest. Out and proud, this gentleman is a passionate activist for both seniors and the LGBTQ community. And the constituencies that he serves will tell you that he's dogged and tenacious about his critical work. And he's conquered chronic, debilitating depression to live his best life. Yes. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Wes Morrison. Talk at me. How the hell are you?
I'm doing fine, Wyatt. And yourself?
I'm doing great, my friend. Thank you so much for dropping by, Wyatt. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, listen, Wes, before we start, I want to give a shout out and thank you to Mr. Aaron Terry. And Aaron is a proud vet, and he's a multi-award winning LGBTQ activist. I want to thank him for introducing us. So way to go, Aaron.
Yes, Aaron, thanks. Thanks for putting us together.
Definitely. Okay, Wes, let's get your backstory. Now, you're a man of a certain age. I believe you're in your 70s, correct?
73.
All right. Yes. Now, let me ask you, where were you born and raised?
I was born here in Washington, D.C. at then Freedman's Hospital, the old Freedman's Hospital before it became Howard University Hospital. And I grew up in Durham, North Carolina, raised by my grandmother and my aunt, who was a school teacher. So I'm a Southerner all the way through.
You know, that is great. I'm a native Washingtonian because I was born in D.C. And all right, cool. Now, I always get a kick out of asking my guests this question. And Wes, here it is. What were you like as a little boy, a little nipper? What 3 characteristics or qualities best described Wes?
Oh, my God. When I was little, it's hard to put into words, but I lived with my aunt, who was a school teacher. So one of the things I could read before going to kindergarten, and one of the fun things about that is I would read dictionaries. And
Get out of here.
And to this day, if I look up a word, I have to at least read 3 or 4 other words that I wasn't familiar with. So that's one thing.
Wow.
Um, I didn't wear long pants until I was 8, which is patterned sort of after the European way of raising children.
Right.
And I was always well dressed as a child. So my mother would send clothes from D.C. Back then, black people could only go to Morton's on Morton
Yes.
Stand.
Yeah, right. That's so
Uh,
true. Yeah.
so, so yeah, those are my basic 3. Growing up in the South, and I remember colored water fountains, white water fountains, colored entrance, white entrance.
Whoa.
And it feels like with the past administration that we were coming full circle to that again.
I agree with you.
But yeah, politics.
Wow. Interesting. Okay, Wes, let's fast forward to 1995 when your mom passed. And man, I empathize because my mom passed in 1997. And you wrote an article where you stated that in her last week before her passing, she was in a hospice and her 3 closest girlfriends couldn't visit because they were homebound. And, this is similar to what hospitalized COVID patients have experienced, not being able to have visits from their family and their
Mhm.
close friends. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, the article I wrote is called If You Didn't Know, how much you mean to me. And what it stemmed from was during my mother's last week, I called her 3 closest girlfriends because they were all homebound too. And I told them that mother wasn't doing any better and that she could still hear but not talk. And I would put the phone to her ear and let them sort of talk, and I would tell them whether mother is shaking her head in agreement or whatever. And I did that for her 3 closest friends. And one of them I knew when I hung up with her best friend, Isabel. I knew that Isabel would not be long after mother. And the next week, when mother passed, and I called everybody back to let them know that she had passed, Isabel's cousin answered the phone and she said, yeah, it was like 2 or 3 days after she talked to your mother.
Wow.
So I tell people now with COVID and not being able to get into the hospitals and other things, call your closest friends. And for
Right.
me, it's like friends that have known me more than 40 years, uh, 40 to 45 years. And just tell them how much you mean to them. And the way I do it, I start out with the number of years we've been friends, if we can remember it.
Right.
And some of the big events that might have happened during, our lifetime, walk on the moon, Kennedy assassination. And then I bring up some of the things that only that person and I did, and I talk about it. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and usually I will end it by saying, I don't want you to respond to this right now because I know what you're thinking you should respond. You got to say something. No, I said, we can just hang up or change the subject. But I wanted you to know this, and that's it.
Well, Wes, that is sage and thoughtful advice, and people need to adhere to that. You know, um, what do you believe are some of the social similarities between the COVID-19 pandemic and also the ongoing HIV/AIDS epidemic? I would think that stigma and discrimination are major components or pieces. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. I made a few notes. Uh,
Oh,
HIV, AIDS, and COVID, the no touch, nobody could touch in either situation.
right.
Couldn't hug your family. COVID was even worse. You couldn't even see your family.
Yeah.
uh, AIDS, a lot of families abandoned their gay or lesbian children and didn't want anything to do with them.
Mm.
Fortunately, that's not happening with COVID, although, in a sense, um, the hatred for Asians uh, and the discrimination against Asians because of Trump's saying it was a China virus is
Right.
bad. Both viruses started out as unknown and seem to be coming from, you know, the AIDS seemed to be from the bathhouses that most gay people were going to. And
Hmm.
COVID, they thought was the meat market, but they also think it could be the research place.
Mm.
And I have been interested, and I've talked about it in a few groups. I've been interested to know whether gay people or LGBTQ or SGL, whether they are more prone to wearing masks because they have lived through the AIDS epidemic than regular people.
Mm.
I have a feeling that we that may have easier time of wearing masks uh,
Mm.
because of not wanting to spread the disease and knowing what we know about horrific pandemics. Uh, that's
Mm.
one thing. And the other thing is the internet has blessing. We didn't have the internet to this extent that we have now uh, during AIDS. But COVID, there is so much that is being done via the computer. Set up your vaccination times, all sorts of things, check in with friends. So there are a lot of similarities between the two.
Yeah, you make some excellent points. And because some individuals have long COVID, meaning having symptoms after many months, still
Yeah,
having the
yeah.
symptoms. I think that the right to privacy, ensuring that people's identities and personal information are not released without their permission is crucial. What's your take on that?
Oh, I definitely agree that any medical information should be considered top secret. Uh, yeah, I don't think it's anybody else's business, particularly with an illness.
Right.
Um, you know, during the AIDS epidemic, yeah, everything was like word of mouth, gossip here, gossip there. Uh, the assumption if you were gay or lesbian, you were automatically HIV positive. I had my next door neighbor do that to me. She said,
What?
"Yeah, she's an older lady, so I just sort of ignored it." But she was talking to me one day, and she says, "Well, you're HIV positive, aren't you?" And I said, "No, no. What gave you that idea?" She said, "Oh, I just assumed if you were gay, you." I was like,
Ugh.
"Yeah, yeah." So
Oh, the misinformation, not being educated. And the bad thing about it is that decades later, you still have too many people thinking that way.
yes, yes. Uh, and it's that not educating yourself and making assumptions about big situations. Yeah. And to COVID, there's probably some of that too. That if you've got a cold and a coughing,
Mm,
somebody might just assume, oh well, even though you got on a mask, you got COVID, and it may not be true.
you're absolutely right. Wes, what we've just said is the perfect segue to what I want to ask you about right now is that you were living in Washington, D.C. at the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, and I believe from 1990 to 2000, you lost more than 100 friends.
Yeah.
And th- to me, that would be mind blowing. So, exactly how did that affect and impact you? let's unpack and sift through that if we could.
Well, it was one of those things where every week you picked up the paper, pick up the blade, and there would be somebody you knew in the obituary column.
Yeah, the Washington Blade newspaper.
Yeah. And, I say 100 in the sense that some were very close personal friends, some were like other friends that I knew from various other places, but not necessarily close. And then there was the bar friends. My friends used to tease me about, you make every bar opening in this city. You're always there. And I'm going like, yeah, I am. So those people were also included in that 100. And I've been
Oof.
thinking about it, and I think I had a dream that I was sitting when this finally came into being, like in 2000 or so. I was at Miss Fraternity House, and I was waiting for my friends to come and have a drink and clown around. And so I'd been sitting there, sitting there, sitting there in this dream,
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly something said, "No one is coming. They
Oh
are all
man.
they are all deceased.
Ooh.
You can go home now." And that's basically the way it happened, because it's a slow process. Every week, one or two, three or four. And then I had a couple of friends that did the go away to die. That was prevalent in a lot of cases back then.
You
That
mean they actually just left their living space?
Yes,
Sort of like sort of like, and I don't mean any harm, but sort of like a pilgrimage to death.
yep, yep. I had several friends that went away to die because they didn't want their friends to see them
Uh,
dying, and they didn't want to be a burden on their families, so they went away. And strange world, one of those friends, I was talking to somebody on AOL Messenger,
oh, I remember that.
and they told me where they were. I can't remember it now, but I said, "Well, do you know Bobby?" And the guy said, and his last name. And he said, "Yeah, I know him. He passed away about 2 months ago. He was our lighting and stage manager."
Ooh.
And he had been one of those that went away to die. So I still found out about his death. And it took the wind out of me.
Well, you know what? I can imagine it did, and it's that overwhelming stigma.
Mm,
That crushing stigma that's like an albatross around your neck that you know made you do that.
yeah, yeah. So, and they didn't realize how hard it is for those friends left behind to not know. Yeah.
Hmm. Wow. Um. Wow. That's yeah. That's a lot to take in. Okay, then in 2009, you and 27 coworkers were laid off. I mean, you were, Wes, for 32 years, I believe. You were an assistant television producer at the same news station, and you adored your job. How in the hell did you cope with that? I mean, because for me, that would
Hmm.
have been devastating.
Well, it
So,
was. To be told in June that your last day is going to be September the 30th um, takes a lot of wind out of you. And yeah, yours cut out too at the same time. Okay.
tell us how you felt about all of that.
Um, well, in the exit interview, as they would call it, they said, we don't think you will fit in with the new technology in the newsroom. And so you're talking about ageism and a lot of things there. And to some degree, I was not very tech savvy, and I knew that. But they tried to teach us in a week what writers and producers and others knew because it was their jobs. And the same thing for people who were in editing. All the tape editors and so forth, that everything now was on a microchip.
Right.
So you feel useless, and it really, and I talk about it in my AARP sessions, that you have a new set of seniors who are laid off suddenly, and they don't have a plan for retirement or not. I had planned to work another 8 years until I was 70.
Right.
So it can throw everything out of kilter, and it added to my depression too.
We're going to get into the depression piece in a minute. Two things I want to say. Number one, ageism is alive and well, particularly now.
Mm-hmm.
And you have companies trying to cost cut, even though it's going to hurt their bottom line, because they're hiring these inexperienced people instead of just nurturing the experienced people that they have.
Mm-hmm.
As that assistant TV producer, you've got some stories. And before we started this interview,
oh God,
can you tell us just one? Can you tell us the Henry Kissinger one? But for the younger folk, tell us, if you want to do this, tell us first of all who Henry Kissinger was, and then tell the story, that interaction.
Well, Henry Kissinger was the Secretary of State for, was it Reagan?
Or before I think, wasn't he was for Nixon and Ford.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Right.
He was really an international Secretary of State because
yes,
he formed policies and so forth. So he was well up there in the hierarchy of politics. And you really want me to tell this?
Yeah, I do.
One day I was in the men's room, and I'm standing there, and all of a sudden you hear somebody clearing their throat, and Henry Kissinger had a deep voice.
Yes.
And so I'm standing there, and I'm trying to be nonchalant, and I'm going, because I work in the business, I know, I'm going, it's Henry Kissinger. Oh, damn. And so I'm trying not to, turn my head and look, because he's peeing too. And I'm like, oh, you got to say something. And so I said, Dr. Kissinger, I know you like having summit meetings around the world, but really in a men's room? And he fell out laughing. And yeah.
When you told me that story off air, I said, we've got to include this because it's a gem.
It's amazing the people that I met. But yeah, that was a fun one because just the humor of being in the men's room. Everybody's got to pee, even Henry Kissinger. So yeah, how human more can you be?
Everybody's got to take a leak at some time or another.
That's right.
Listen, thank you for telling us that story. Okay. I can imagine, Wes, that, losing all of those friends and acquaintances to HIV, AIDS, And the loss of the job threw you into a period of chronic depression.
Yes.
And, a few years back, I wrote this multi-part series about depression's peculiar grip on Black LGBTQ folk for both my website, wyattevans.com, and the Huffington Post. And depression inflicts a disproportionate impact on Black LGBTQ folk. So let's chat about your experience with depression. What symptoms did you have? How did it make you feel? That sort of thing.
Well, I still have it. Um, Sort of two forms of depression.
Ah,
I have fibromyalgia, which
mhm.
is uh, they used to say it was the inflammation of the muscle tissue and excruciating pain, brain fog sometimes. So there was depression that went along with that just because of the disease. And I was diagnosed in 1982 by a really good rheumatologist because most people thought it was a woman's disease. Go figure. How many women's disease do I have? Uh, uh,
Okay.
so, so that, and then I have clinical depression, and probably a lot of that is due to being black and gay and
Yes. Yep.
all of that. So there's
Yeah.
a great documentary, and I'm trying to think of the name of it. I want to say it's You Are Not Alone, but I don't think that's it. It's about how the black church has hurt
Mm.
LGBT people, and they interview all of these guys and the horrors that they went through at church, and it's a great piece.
And you're absolutely right because unfortunately, the Black church can be so hypocritical. I mean, they've got the choir that usually, anecdotally anyway, is mostly gay.
Mhm.
And we have heard and we've probably known of some so-called straight Black ministers, preachers who are on the down low,
Yes.
right? And they live this double life and they recruit and all of that. So, I mean, it's the whole hypocrisy and the stigma that can really cause us, Black LGBTQ, particularly though Black gay men, to suffer from this depression, you know,
Hmm.
at these rates.
It's very high, and my y- I talk about death a lot here, but one of my earliest, I was about 13 or 14 when I moved here to DC, and I met this guy at church. His nickname was Dickie, and big guy.
Mm,
And we sort of hit it off, and we knew what each other was, but we didn't have a name for it then. It was just, two homosexuals talking.
right.
And one day, Dickie and I were downtown, and we were at Kit's Music, and I told him, "You ought to go in and play the organ." And he was like, "No, I can't go in and work." And so, me being bullheaded, I dragged him in, and they gave you that, "May I help you?" And I was like, "Yes, you may." And we went upstairs and played the organ so much so that the people in the street came up, and when we looked behind us, there was a crowd in the store listening to him play.
Mm.
And about 2 or 3 weeks after that, he jumped off the 14th Street Bridge,
What?
and he was about 14 or 15. We were about the same age. So that was my first initiation to how being gay can destroy you. And his parents blamed me for it because they said if he wasn't friends with you, he wouldn't have done it.
Wow, that really resonates with me because Wes and the audience, I suffer from depression from time to time. And when I was in my 20s, for example, when I was struggling to come to terms with my sexual orientation, my authentic self,
Mm-hmm.
I spiraled into depression. Um, I was also in depression when I was in a intimate partner violence and abuse situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then another period happened right after my mother's death. So I totally get it. And then when you wrap in systemic institutional racism, when you
Mm-hmm.
have all of those layers, it's not crazy. It's not crazy to believe that black gay men in particular, black gay SGL men in particular, suffer through depression, particularly chronic depression.
Yeah, because the church wants you because you can almost be a soprano singer or you can play the organ and everybody is, yay, you're a wonderful person. And then you go out of church and they want to kill you. You know,
Yeah,
it's like, we'll accept you in the church because we need you. But once you step outside, you're just a gay, you know, slur.
exactly. It's like you're disposable. They are using you for one purpose, and when they're done with that,
Yep, exactly.
you're disposable. And what I do want to say is that I'm a strong advocate for therapy, for psychological counseling, because it's definitely helped me. And I like to make this analogy. Let's say you have a broken arm. You're not going to treat it by yourself. It's not going to heal by itself. You're going to go to the doctor. He's going to examine you. He'll probably put it in a cast and give you meds. And that's the same way with the psyche. You need some professional help, a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You need to do some time on the couch so you can understand yourself and come to terms with stuff. And maybe you might need some antidepressants for a time.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to treat the psyche just like you would treat a bodily injury because it's not going to heal on it by itself.
Right, right. And most people are embarrassed to seek help.
Yes.
And really, it's becoming better. Uh, Even with this George Floyd trial on television, at the end of most of the newscasts, they put up a suicide prevention line, a mental health line that you can call because some people are stressing out over watching this trial.
Oh yeah.
And depression, I was uh, in therapy with several different uh, psychiatrists, and I'm one of those rare people that really have interesting tidbits on the side. My
Hmm.
last psychiatrist, I knew something was wrong with him,
Uh
and
oh.
I knew that he moved his office from Chevy Chase to way out somewhere, hard to get to. And I'm going, okay, this is not good. He committed suicide about a month later. So, how do you deal with your psychiatrist committing suicide?
Well, let me t- gosh, let me tell you everybody. Now look, just because that happened doesn't mean to say that you should not seek therapy because like I said, I'm a strong proponent for it because I know it's helped me and other people. And sometimes you have to go from one therapist to another, just like I did, to find the one that fits for you.
And you're right. You have to find one that fits for you. And I tell that story in the sense of even the professionals have depression, and you may not know it. And
Right.
and to seek help is vital. And one of the good places, and particularly I think for LGBT people, I'll give them a plug, is the Went Center up on Connecticut Avenue, WENDT. It specializes in grief, death, and other forms of grief. And I was in therapy there for a while, dealing with this 100 people dead. Uh, and I'm told Whitman Walker also recommends some of their patients to go to the Went Center because it knows how to deal well with grief.
And the Went Center and Whitman Walker are both in Washington, D.C.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, Wes, something lifted you out of your depression and rejuvenated you. Specifically, what was that?
The depression of having lost the job as well as the 100 friends.
Exactly.
My own realizing that, okay, you need some help with this. And so I went to the Went Center, so that helped a lot. And then I started to look around. I'd always thought when I retire, I would probably try and help gay youth, but somehow gay seniors popped up out of nowhere. And yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, we do get like I told somebody once. I said, we do not turn into pixie dust and blow away. We die too, whole body, and that you know. So I started with a lady named Carol Page at AARP. She got me to march in Gay Pride March with AARP.
Mm-hmm.
The rest is history because I got involved with Iona, and I'm involved with several research programs. So
Now, what does Iona stand for, and what's its mission?
it doesn't stand for anything. I think it's a name uh, with someone who I think who used to own the mansion that they are housed in. I think, but it doesn't have a specific meaning. But what it does do, it is the lead agency in Ward 3. DC is divided into 8 wards, and each ward has a specific agency to help seniors. And for Ward 3, which is where I am,
Mm-hmm.
Iona is the service, and they do everything from help you to find a nursing home for your parents or memory care for parents or friends or yourself. Uh, and they have a very good LGBTQ seminar series on, living solo, uh, how to fight isolation when you're a senior. Um, in fact, we have a group that Whitman Walker and Iona work together called the Silver Circle. And the Silver Circle is for gay men and women, but gay men over 60 and issues that they have to deal with. And we have a mixed group, men and women. We have women's groups. We have men's groups. And we talk about issues that affect seniors. And as well as sometimes we just giggle about how we are aging.
Yeah. Cool. Now, you do a lot of work for Iona, and they call you their unofficial ambassador. How does that make you feel, Mr. Morrison?
I feel good. I feel good because before COVID, I used to do a lot of presentations on Medicare fraud and consumer fraud for seniors. And I would carry, they have a resource guide not not specifically for LGBTQ people, but it includes them in their resources. And it's online at iona.org. And I always took copies of it with me to hand out to people if they wanted it. And they will even help people in other wards of DC. For instance, they have a memory care uh, building in Ward 8 that is to help the seniors there with memory problems. And I think right now with COVID, they're only doing like 5 or so at a time, but eventually it will be opened up. And they are helping Ward 7 do something else. And they also, if you are in DC and your parents are in Nevada, you can ask them for help in finding a place for your parents when they are elderly, and they will do the best they can to outreach across the nation.
That's amazing.
It's and I love it because I love putting things together that work out well. And so far with Iona, most of the things I've done with them has worked out very well.
That is wonderful. Well, let me ask you, Wes, what do you have on tap for the rest of 2021, particularly, with Iona, et cetera, et cetera?
I guess just continuing to do what I do, uh, as long as COVID is around, doing it by Zoom meetings or WebEx. Uh, I haven't done any presentations per se, but I'm in a research program at Johns Hopkins, and
Ah,
and I've been in that program for about 30 years, and I'm on the board, so I will be helping them, or I will be reading proposals for research for them. So I'll help uh, them decide what might be good research and what might not be. Uh, Locally, when COVID is more stable, I'd like to get back out doing presentations on fraud and consumer fraud, and continuing to work on intergenerational LGBTQ in the sense that we being some of the groups I belong to, would like to get younger people involved with us so that we could help them with things that are meaningful to them that uh, we could advocate for them,
right.
as well as they learning from us what it's like to be older and gay,
Mm,
that they could help us make laws and other things presentable for them when they get to be our age.
I think that's really would be quite useful because I believe that um, more the younger gay SGL men need that mentorship, need to find out about the experiences of their, older members, that sort of
Right,
thing.
right. Yeah, we have Seabury, which is lead agency for a couple of wards, I think, and Capitol Hill Village, as a matter of fact. They work together to put on a lot of or are working on putting together intergenerational events precisely for that reason.
And Capitol Hill Village, of course, is in DC.
Yeah, I
Got
forget.
it. Right.
I forget you're international.
I'm trying.
uh,
Okay. Wes, how do us grown folk contact you, connect with you, give us your social media, all of that wonderful stuff?
All right, showing my age. I am not on Instagram or uh, what's the other one? Twitter,
Facebook?
Facebook and Twitter. I'm on Facebook. Uh, Usually, I'll say probably through Iona, is
Right.
rather than giving out my personal email. Iona.org and type in Wes Morrison and stuff will come up. And you could fill out the message thing there and they'll give it to me.
Great. All right. Well, Mr. Wes Morrison, I want to thank you for visiting Wyatt. I really appreciate it.
Wyatt, it's been a pleasure. And you got a few stories out of me that nobody has in a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. All right.
The Henry Kissinger one is something I rarely talk about.
Ooh, I'm so glad you shared it with my audience, my friend. Oh, yeah. Before I jet out of here, I gotta give you an update on my sidekick, Madam Pussy Galore Cock-a-Doodle-Doo, Drag Queen Supreme. Well, she's still off. And like I said last week, when you think about it, she's always off. As you know, she's been away promoting her new crazy ass book titled, and get this, dun 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 dun, Popular Penetration: How to Treat Your Man's Big Old Cucumber in Just the Right Way. Totally, totally unbelievable, but true. Now, as you know, last week, Madam had this special event at Grunts and Snorts. Allegedly, it's the most popular Bears club in Podunk, West Virginia. Yeah, Podunk, West Virginia. Anywho, she drove down to Grunts and Snorts in her 1978 Ford Pinto. Remember that dead of a car? You know, with the engines falling out, stopping in the middle of traffic. It's a death trap of a car that would explode and only got like 18 miles to the gallon. Well, after the book event, whatever it was, she lugged her 199 copies of Popular Penetration back to that Pinto. And keep in mind, she was only able to sell one copy, just one copy of a book. And that was at a 60% discount, whole thing. Now, check this out, check this out. As the frustrated and frazzled madam tried to crank up the ignition, chugga, 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 chugga. That Pinto, Mr. Pinto groaned, "Hey, bitch, leave me the F alone. Don't you see that you've already run my ass into the ground? You put 500,000 miles on me. That's a goddamn 500,000 miles. And you've only detailed me like once in 30 years. And if you really want to get technical with it, you've only detailed me 1.5 times. Just 1.5 times in 30 years because the guy who was working on me stopped halfway because you didn't have no money to finish the fucking job." Can you freaking believe this? And Mr. Pinto continued, "Now, Miss Puss Puss, like Danny Glover said in Lethal Weapon, I'm just too old for this shit. Now, on the count of 5, I'm gonna freaking self-destruct like on the old Mission Impossible TV series." Well, what was Madam Pussy Galore Cock-a-Doodle-Doo's response? Well, it was simply this. Y'all, she bailed out of that pencil like a bat out of hell. Well, the explosion could be heard like many, many blocks away, and it's my understanding that Madam is 2/3 of the way back to the studio. on foot. Y'all, she's ripping and running and walking and hiking, trying to get back here as fast as she can. And meanwhile, her breasts are flipping and flopping and jingling and her bargain basement weave is like barely hanging on. Y'all, she's just a hot mess. All right, so there you have it. You can find the official Wyatt podcast page at wyattevans.com, and the official hashtag is Wyatt on Air. Now, if you want to be a guest on Wyatt or you just have comments, you can email me at wyattonair@gmail.com. You can follow me, Wyatt O'Brien Evans, your host, on Facebook.com/Wyatt O'Brien Evans, on Twitter at Mr. Woe, and on Instagram at Mr. Wyatt O, which is MRWYATTO. Be sure to check out my Nothing Can Tear Us Apart series of novels, the latest being Frenzy and its predecessor Rage, all at wyattevans.com. So until next time, woof, goddammit, woof, woof, woof.